Good morning, BuckTube. It's your boy Buck once again. This time I am joined with my sidekick and legal representation, Beefton Duke. He's having a hard time moving his lampshade head around though. He keeps destroying it. We're working on crate training right now because Alright, bye. You know how animals take on the characteristics of the people that they spend the most time around? Just like people take on the characteristics of people that they spend the most time around? Well, unfortunately, Beefton has contracted ADHD somehow. And how you treat that is vigorous daily exercise and stable routines, and in extreme circumstances, medication. But his leg is all busted up, so he can't do vigorous daily exercise anymore. He's trying. I'm very talkative. He's trying to do vigorous daily exercise, and he doesn't seem to realize that they just stitched his leg back together like a week and a half ago. So we go outside and he's like, let's go, let's tear up. And I have to choke him back on the chain. Well, it's not a chain, it's a leash, and it connects to here, so he's not choked at all. But I'm like, you gotta chill, dude. We can't be doing, look at him. You can see the scar. Even with the little low def 720 webcam that I got from work, you can see it on his ridiculous shaved leg, you know? But he wants to go, man, and I understand that because I also always want to go. All the time I want to go. So he's having psychosis pretty much around the clock, and we're working on crate training. Now, I was not a big advocate of the crate because the dog should run free, but the problem is if the dog is insane, when the dog runs free, the dog destroys the house. Plus, the dog likes the crate because it's like their own little cave. It's just like this situation that I got here at the command center. You know, I like this. I like spending time here. And he likes spending time in his little cave. Or he's starting to. I keep tempting him in there with liver and pineapple. But he'll be in there for a while, and then he'll start to wig out and he'll annihilate his lampshade. Show me your lampshade. So I have to put it back together with duct tape over and over again. He's only got the lampshade for 2 more days. And I have 2 rolls of duct tape left. We're going to be fine. So that's enough for an intro. We're going to talk about something that has absolutely nothing to do with any of that today. Aside from maybe animal welfare. And it is called Silent Spring by Rachel Carson. Odds are you heard of this book. I certainly heard of this book. This book was recommended to me many, many times because it is alleged to be one of the foundational, the flagship books that launched ecology as we know it, that launched the idea of conservation. Rachel Carson is one of the early conservationists, and she hit the scene in 1950, so that gives you some indication about how we were treating the absolute state of the place prior to the invention of conservation, the development of conservation, I suppose. This is highly recommended to anybody who is of the shrub, just like a paleo boy. And I figured it was going to be very environmentally focused. I figured it was going to be Ted-pilled. This is delicate, because right now there is a resurgence in Ted-pilled rhetoric, and that has been advanced even further by the actions of beloved internet heartthrob Luigi Mangione. I don't think it's in my best interests to speak too widely or specifically on Uncle Ted's contributions to the cause as of yet, as they're just snapping up everybody, There's the lists, they're starting to pull the lists. So instead, I will wait until it cools off a little bit, and then I will probably review a manifesto or two. Might have a couple of manifesto reviews here on the BuckTube in the near future. This is the closest we have for now, because technically what Rachel Carson wrote was a manifesto. So she was a marine biologist in the 50s, and she was doing really well with that. Marine bio, like looking at dolphins or whatever. Yep, those are dolphins, all right. But she stumbled onto some dark tidings, and the more she explored them, the worse it got. So, can you believe this guy? She started to extend her research into the consequence of pesticides. This is normally if you are of delicate disposition and worry about like what's in the water to the point where it makes you lose sleep. Go pick another video. Go watch Empire of the Vampire instead. That one, you'll be alright. If you are concerned about anything schizoid, really, this is not the book review for you. This is not the book for you. Ignorance is sometimes bliss. This is an ostrich situation. Just jam your head in the sand. However, if you can handle these hard truths that sweet Rachel Carson brought to our attention, I don't know what his problem is right now. Okay, well, we're just gonna go around the dog, okay? If you can handle these hard truths brought to our attention by sweet Rachel Carson, then by all means, let us forge ahead. The pesticides kill everything. We are part of everything. Now, this is one of the most poignant examples of how humans consider themselves to be separate from nature, and how we are. It is proved to us time and time again that we are not. Now, in this instance, there were blanket sprayings, right? The chemical companies, it's always the chemical companies, manufactured all of these new and exciting forms of insect murder that they could just blanket spray across afflicted areas to get rid of whatever the problem was. Whatever buggy was the problem, because it all comes back to wheat. And as we know, the agricultural revolution and its consequences have been a disaster for the human race. We could be out in the shrub right now. I could be wearing a wolf pelt and killing bison with a spear. There could still be bison. But we screwed it all up, and it's because of some Mesopotamian figuring out how to make wheat. Oh, I hate wheat. I abjure the demon wheat. So all of this is about wheat. Everything wrong in your life, if you look around, if you go outside and look around and there are things and they seem bad, it is caused by corn or wheat. Just so you know, eventually it's like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Eventually you can get back to how corn or wheat is the problem. And if you're British for some reason, corn is maize. Maize and wheat. There were problems where the bugs were depleting the harvest of the wheat, cutting into the bottom line for these farmers, most of whom were subsidized by the government. So the government's losing money, and the government refuses to lose money. So the government pays off some contractors to develop special poisons that can be sprayed into the air and water. Let's go over that again. The government pays off mercenaries to develop special neurotoxins to spray into the air and water to take care of the bug situation. And it works. It works brilliantly. The thing is, dead bugs full of poison feed the rest of the ecosystem. And the poison that you're just spraying in all directions is soaking into the ground. And because of the cycle of precipitation, cannot believe the government is not aware of the cycle of precipitation. You learn this in like third grade. Third grade, you learn about the rain cycle. And for some reason in the 1950s, this just entirely eluded the government. No, don't worry. The poison will go into the bugs, and that'll be the end of it, and we'll all live happily ever after and have enough wheat to continue to drive up obesity rates and cause heart disease. The poison soaks into the bugs and kills the bugs en masse, but it also kills everything that eats the bugs, or at least makes them very, very sick. So Rachel Carson's book, and I thought it was going to be a narrative, and I thought she was going to be preaching, you know, because, again, this is highly recommended by all of these let's go with green anarchist, literary corners. It was not. It was a scientific treatise. It was very specific in that it was just laying out what has happened, what happens in these different places, the different kinds of chemicals. She hates DDT. Oh, I mean, we all do, because we know what's wrong with it now, but Rachel Carson knew first, and then nothing happened for 60 years. So this whole time we've just been like straight huffing the poison like it's dentist gas, you know, like we're doing whippets of straight poison. So the poison, she talked a lot about Maine and how Maine is like this highfalutin tourist destination, or was once upon a time, until they started to do the blanket spraying with the DDT or comparable chemicals. And that, of course, wiped out all of the bugs that were the problem. But it also wiped out everything else. They took care of, there was like pest vegetation they were worried about, these intrusive species that globalization caused to overtake all of our beautiful natural areas. So sprayed the bejeepers out of that with the poison, and of course it killed all of the vegetation we didn't want, but it killed everything else too, because it's poison, dude. It's poison. You're putting neurotoxins on everything. So killed the bugs, and then what eats the bugs? Well, the fish. Killed the fish. What eats the fish? The birds. Killing the birds. Birds are dying in droves, right? And we're like, oh, I don't know why these birds are all dying. Must be global warming. And like, probably a little bit, but mostly because you're filling them with poison. So this goes all the way up the chain, right? So you have poison soaking into the ground. And then the rain is carrying the poison. It's the precipitation, right? It's evaporating. And it goes into the clouds and it becomes more rain. Poison still in the water. Poison's in the water. Now the water's in the air. And so it floats around for a while, and it's like, yeah, this is a good spot. And then it rains. And it rains on a farm. So even though you sprayed over there, because of how things work, and we knew that, the rain is now here. And so is the poison. So the poison is in the crop, whatever it is you're growing. It doesn't have to be wheat. Wheat is its own little poison, but whatever it is you're growing. And also, what if it's a dairy farm? Well, guess what? Those cows full of poison. What if it's a factory farm? It's okay. They're locked in horrible torture cells where they don't get to move until it's time for them to turn into food. Well, guess what? Water comes from somewhere. Where does water come from? Outside. Guess what's outside? It's poison. So poison's everywhere. Poison's everywhere, and poison is being pumped into all of the food, and eventually it reaches us, and guess what? We're also full of poison. I know, dude. It's nuts. We're also full of poison. There's poison everywhere. And Rachel Carson's like, dude, somebody's got to do something about how there's poison everywhere. We need to like regulate all of the poison everywhere. This is an issue. Remember when they started to discover that tobacco was a carcinogen, and all of the cigarette companies were like, nuh-uh, we have no proof. It's good for you. It keeps away the plagues. And that went on for like 20 years until tobacco was like, Philip Morris was like, okay, maybe. Sorry. So that's what happened with the DDT. That's what happened with all the chemical sprays. So there are alternatives. Alternatives currently exist. You can, it's a lot more effective to try to treat pest, like insects, things that are eating the crops, with they're complementary predators. So I am a big fan of dropping in the wolves. Do you guys ever hear about this in Canada? In Canada, there was a problem with overpopulation of all sorts of prey species, and it was just really screwing with the ecosystem up there. And the reason that they were able to overpopulate is because the wolves had been killed. Then we had been shooting wolves from helicopters because wolves were this evil, predatory, they just waiting for an opportunity to eat the babies, to steal, like the dingoes, to just sneak in and steal the babies. Wolves are unstoppable. If they see you, they'll kill you instantly. And eventually we started to come to the gradual realization, largely in part to people like Rachel Carson, that wolves are not cold-blooded killing machines. They're not cold-blooded, they're killing machines. But they're not after us. They kind of like us because we have been functionally co-evolving with them for the past 30 to 40,000 years minimum. That's how we got dogs. And like the wolves that remain are the ones who didn't take too kindly to that. But I recently read this really interesting idea that we may have learned the kind of cooperation that we do from wolves, from our coevolution with wolves, because like we as human beings were very anthropocentric, anthropomorphic, anthropocentric. We're very anthropocentric, but that doesn't mean we did all of this. And if we look at most of our primate relatives, they tend not to have the same levels of coordination and cooperation and long-term strategic planning that we do. Like you can see it in chimps, they make alliances and stuff like that. But when you look at how we conquered the world, you know, like walking down mammoths, chimps don't do anything like that. No other primate does anything like that. But wolves do that. I mean, they don't walk them down because they're built wrong for it. But the way they coordinate, the way they do their little football plays, the idea, the theory is that we may have picked that up from our coevolution with wolves, and I like that a whole lot. That makes a lot of sense to me. Wolves are not these relentless killing machines necessarily. Wolves are sort of like us. And eventually we realized that, and we stopped killing them in cold blood constantly. So who's the real wolves here? Canada. But the damage was already done, and their ecosystem was all out of whack, and there were consequences all the way up and down the chain. So what did they do? They just dropped in more wolves. They just got a bunch of wolves that were once native to this area of Canada, and they threw in more wolves, and guess what? The wolves did great and stabilized everything. Boom. We're great. So if you have this invasive species because you imported boll weevils because you were an idiot, what are you going to do? Well, what eats a boll weevil? Get them involved. And she was talking about how the most effective means of this population control among these species was to create these predatory animals that were sterile. Sterilized versions of whatever this main predator was. So that way, even if it gets out into the population, you're not just swapping one problem for another. Whatever eats the boll weevils, some sort of horrible scorpion spider, let's say. So you airdrop, you sterilize these scorpion spiders, and you drop just a load of them down there, and then they go and they spread out, and within a generation, it'd have to be within a generation, they bring the issue to heal. And because there tend to be no, if you're fortunate, you'll find the right combination that will prevent any other predator from targeting your genetically engineered sterilized scorpion spider, which means they will do as well as the boll weevil currently is, ultimately wiping out the boll weevil. Because it's like how we annihilated the dodo, you know? There was nothing to stop us. We had no predators, and the dodos just stood there like, So it was easy. And it's going to be easy for the horrible scorpion spider too. And then it's not going to pass on the genes to the next generation because you sterilized it. So bing, bang, boom, everything's fine. And guess what? We're not drinking poison. But there remains a lot of poison in the water in the land as it stands. So there are efforts to get that under control with middling success. It's kind of going okay. DDT's banned, and that happened in 1972. So Rachel Carson wrote this in the 50s. Let me tell you when in the 50s. 1962. So she showed up and she was like, hey, you are killing all of us. Everything is horrible. And it's because you're putting poison on everything. Poison doesn't, like, if it poisons bugs, it will poison us. And it goes all the way up the chain because we're all still animals. We're not different. We're not different from animals. If you see an effect on animals, this effect will accumulate in us because we're so high up on the food chain. It's the same reason that large fish have a lot of mercury in them and little fish don't. Sardines are always going to be safe from mercury because they just don't eat enough tainted food to work a large quantity of mercury into their delicious fish flesh. But then you wind up with the bigger fish like tuna. Tuna eat a lot of sardines, probably. I don't know if they'd like I'm not a marine biologist, that's Rachel Carson. But tuna eat a lot of small fish, and the small fish all have a little bit of mercury in them. You eat a lot of small fish with a little bit of mercury in them. Guess what? You're a big fish, you got a lot of mercury in you. It's just the way it goes. Sad but true. So that's happening to us with all of the poisons. What do you do? Well, it's mindful consumption is your best bet, really. Just try it. Like, it's possible to figure out where your food comes from. It's possible to buy organic. I don't go in huge for the organic, but because it's largely just a marketing gimmick. You buy local, you buy fresh, you buy seasonal. You're going to reduce your likelihood of being exposed to these chemicals because, I mean, a lot of them are banned, but not all of them. And you have to understand that the ones who aren't banning these poisons are the same ones that can get away with not banning these poisons. So the Walmarts of the world, these ultra mega conglomerate farms, these huge massive factory farms, these places don't need to worry as much about the poisons because you're going to buy it anyway, you schmuck. That why would they care? You know, whereas the smaller places, a lot of them can't get away with it. Cow's just a cow. The cow is grass-fed. The tomatoes are small but taste better because they're not full of mysterious hormones, or they have fewer mysterious hormones than their mass market competitors. You know, the ones that you find in the grocery store that are like, no tomato's ever been this big. That doesn't happen, you know? Oh, end of the day, up and down the chain, a lot of poison. You can avoid the poison if you look for it carefully, but you got to be mindful about it, and you got to take these extra steps to try not to consume poison because they want you to consume poison. And yes, that is a they with a capital T. This is a schizo rant. This is pure conspiracy. The Illuminati. The Illuminati wants you to eat poison. I don't know why. That's just how they are. But you can choose not to. You just gotta not be dumb about it. And Rachel Carson didn't know that. Well, in Rachel Carson's time, that wasn't necessarily applicable. You couldn't really choose not to because it was everywhere. But now they're starting to get banned, and we have these alternatives for how it can be treated. And there are ways that make more sense. But the thing about money is just because it makes more sense doesn't mean people are going to be amenable to it. It's just like Temple Grandin talks about this in one of her books. She invented a machine that hugs cows, as you well know, and developed this system. Maybe you didn't know that. Temple Grandin invented a cow hugging machine. Cows love it. It reduces their stress, increases their milk output. Everybody wins. Why wouldn't everyone just get a cow hugging machine? They just don't. They largely just don't. You should talk the same way about pig farms. Pig farms are the closest thing to hell that you're ever going to see, because pigs are the closest thing to humans that you're ever going to see. Probably closer than most primates. And we put them in these cells where they can't turn around, and it's just layers of their own feces, So it's a disaster, and it's open animal cruelty and blah blah blah. So nothing good. Do not, if you can avoid it, don't look up factory pig farms. Very bleak, very depressing. So Temple Grandin invented a new structure for factory pig farms. And the way that she sets it up actually demonstrably improved output of whatever you're growing. Because Temple Grandin is not like a vegan. Like, she eats food. She eats animals as food. She just thinks that we can do better by them. They don't need to suffer before they become food. And not only is she correct about that, but the strategies that she offers go on to make it more profitable and more beneficial to everyone involved. So we're talking the animals themselves, the people who are consuming the animals, and the shareholders, the people who are selling the animals. Everyone's doing better. Everyone's making more money. Things would be phenomenal. So why wouldn't this be just blanket implemented across all factory pig farms? They just don't. They're just not. Well, we've always done it this way, so we're not going to do it any different because this works fine. And that is largely what's going to happen within the realm of pesticides as well, and has been thus far. So just be careful what you're eating and what you're drinking. This is filtered tap water, but probably full of poison. But I've made it this far. Alright, I gotta go to work. Thank you for tuning in. BuckTube, like, follow, subscribe if you want to hear more apocalyptic doomsaying. And I will have another one up for you probably within 48 hours. Alright, toodaloo.